This Week in Startups is brought to you by HostGator, your one-stop shop to getting your business online. Your domain name, website, website design, and even your marketing. They've got you covered. Have questions? Their team is there 24/7 via chat, phone, and email to help you. Start today for 30% off with coupon code TWiST. And PagerDuty, serving as the hub of your operations, aggregating all of your infrastructure monitoring tools, and alerting the right people and teams at the right time. Sign up today at pagerduty.com/twist and get a free t-shirt when you get your first alert.
Hey everybody, a very special This Week in Startups today. Tim O'Reilly, one of my all-time heroes, and in a way, my inspiration for a lot of what I do with magazines, blogs, events, and podcasts. Of course, he does O'Reilly the publisher, but he also does a series of events, and he came on the program today to just rap out about artificial intelligence, the on-demand economy, the WTF economy, and his career and journey. He's been on the program before a couple of years ago. We did a fireside chat at South by Southwest. He's one of the most soulful, considered, intelligent people I've met, and I've met everybody. It's going to be an amazing episode. You're going to get a ton out of it. It's a really, really great conversation. Enjoy.
That's what it's all about, man. They said money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. We ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you. Yeah, money is the root of all evil. What? Funny how it feeds my people. Yeah, we ain't gonna live like equals until we get the money, spend the money, and defeat you.
Hey everybody, welcome to This Week in Startups. I'm your host, Jason Calacanis, and I've been in the internet industry, well, since its inception. And when I was coming up in the internet industry, there were a series of events that I coveted, that I tried to go to. E-Tech was one of them, and O'Reilly Made the Books is one of my heroes, Esther Dyson, PC Forum. And so when I was coming up in the industry and I was a 20-something, I didn't have my own events. I didn't have my own angel investing. I was like a nobody. And I begged to go to these events and try and get a ticket. And one of the 2 or 3 people who would always somehow figure out, be kind enough to get me a ticket to their event when I begged and pleaded for a discount or any way to get in was Tim O'Reilly. I never forget. I never forget the people who helped me in some way, and I never forget the people who didn't help me. That's the kind of guy I am. I just remember these things. I guess it's growing up in Brooklyn or just growing up poor. You remember when somebody helps you out and how much it means to you. And Tim O'Reilly, you don't even remember. But when I was coming up in the industry and I was a little bit of a rabble-rouser and probably annoying to a lot of people, you actually gave me a ticket to E-Tech multiple times and helped me out when I was a nobody. And for that, I thank you.
That was a great event. So many people describe it as, almost the event of the modern internet age. It really grew out of an event that I did in 2001 on, peer-to-peer and web services. And people were like, what do these things have to do with each other? And I was like, well, they have to do with the internet as the platform. And, so E-Tech was that event until we launched Web 2.0,
right,
which was sort of a reframing of that story, for a business audience as opposed for the early adopter geeks.
Yeah, but that was such a great event. See, E-Tech was emerging technology it stood for, I think. Yeah. And I remember like it was yesterday, San Diego, I think you had it in. I mean, I don't know, how many years did you do that one?
Again, it morphed. It was originally the peer-to-peer and web services conference, and then it morphed into E-Tech, which I think we ran for 6 or 7 years, but it really did get overtaken by the Web 2.0 Summit.
Web 2.0 Summit,
which really was dealing with the same themes. And, I think the key thing, I wasn't meaning to start out here, but it really does bring up the importance of the maps that we draw about the future. William Gibson famously said, the future is here, it's just not evenly distributed yet. And people can often see that there's something happening, but they don't quite have a story about what it is. And
Mr. Jones?
That's right.
There's something happening, I don't know what it is.
One of the big areas that I'm focused on now, in the same way I was focused on how does the internet change the fundamental nature of the industry, which was a story I was telling through the last decade. I'm really thinking about how is the internet changing the structure of corporations, how is it changing the nature of work, everything from AI and algorithms and how they're already impacting society. And what I'm trying to do is something that I've done before, which is put things together that people don't necessarily see as belonging together.
Right.
Like back in that first peer-to-peer and web services summit, people literally were completely puzzled. My 3 keynotes for that event, one was on distributed computation, SETI at home, one was on web services, and one was on Napster. And people just were scratching their head. What do these things have to do with each other?
What does SETI and Napster have to do? It's it has to do everything to do with each other.
Yeah, and now it's completely obvious that they
Right.
were all connected, but and so in a similar way right now, I'm asking questions like, what do AI and scheduling software and Uber and guaranteed basic income have to do with each other?
Right. And you know what? It's interesting. I see the thread, and this is all going to come together, I should note, at Next Economy, a summit taking place on November 12th and 13th here in San Francisco, I believe. And the subtitle is What is the Future of Work, or WTF.
Yeah, WTF, of course, stands for what's the future.
Exactly.
But there's another, more common meaning for that. And if you think about WTF, it's an expression of both wonder, wow, that's amazing,
Right.
and an expression of, oh my God, that's really, crappy.
Yeah.
And
you could be scared in saying WTF, you could be horrified, or you could be delighted.
Yeah, and I think we're at this really WTF moment in the economy. There's amazing stories, of the power of technology to transform what we're doing. You think about what's starting to happen with just sort of AI creeping into everybody's lives. You see a kid growing up with the idea that they will just talk to their music system and tell it what they want it to play, or they'll be talking to their television. You start thinking, well, how does that bleed into the world of work? You start thinking about, autonomous drones, autonomous cars. These are all like WTF things. Just the fact that you can summon a car, when Uber and Lyft were first starting out, this was freaking amazing. And now it's kind of like,
we get used to it real quick.
We get used to it. I've actually been laughing because it reminds me a little bit, there's the Silicon Valley term about unicorns.
Yeah.
And of course, the all-time great quote about unicorns is from Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are Dead, Tom Stopper's play, where he describes, one person sees a unicorn and it's totally amazing. 2 people see it and it's even more amazing. And it never gets more amazing than that, because once 3 people see it, it starts to get watered down. And by the time a lot of people see it, it's as thin as reality.
Right.
Yeah. And we're in that process. But there's the other kind of WTF, which is, understanding just how badly we have used technology. I wrote a piece on Medium a couple of weeks ago called "Workers in a World of Continuous Partial Employment."
Yeah.
Because that's been this description of the on-demand economy. There's no stability. There's no.
Is that fair that there's no stability?
No. Well, let me put it this way. Let me put this in order. Whether it's fair or not, it depends on who you are and what you're looking for. If you are a 20-something, this may be the dream job for you. Right. Because you can get extra income without any commitments. I was just talking to someone at Instacart, and he said, our problem is not, how much time people want to put in a given week. It's that they might want to work for a couple of months and then just vanish for a couple of months and then come back and pick up where they left off.
It really seems
and so for that kind of person, it's a great job. But then you look on the other side, and there are all these issues for, low-wage workers for whom, it is, in fact, a matter of how they're going to pay their bills. And they're often locked into jobs that are actually even more contingent than these so-called on-demand jobs, even though they are, W-2 employment jobs versus 1099. So for example, I really came to the conclusion that all of the policymakers who are thinking W-2 versus 1099 are completely missing the point, because there are a lot of ways that people have used automatic scheduling technology to make a W-2 job way worse than a 1099 job.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem that when a person gets to pick their own hours and pick their own lifestyle, this will make a person happier. And at the end of the day, what is our goal, I guess, with employment, when you think of employment as a construct, well, we have to provide for ourselves some basic, shelter and food. But these young kids, they're living a very minimalist lifestyle where they don't have a lot of possessions. They don't buy cars. They work at WeWork or a work sharing space. They don't sign a lease for their companies. They seem a little bit transient. They have a lighter footprint, but they want to experience more. They're experience driven as opposed to accumulating wealth and accumulating object driven.
Yeah, I think that's true. What isn't clear is how big that population is and how that population may change its goals as it ages. So we have to be careful not to read too much into that.
Right.
But I think what we can read is there is at least the possibility of a very, very different relationship to work. And again, this is not unique to the tech world. I was talking recently with David Autor, who's a famous labor economist at MIT. And one of the things I was asking him is, anybody studying countries where there is some kind of guaranteed income? Thinking about oil-rich countries like Saudi Arabia or
and to explain to the audience what guaranteed income is?
Yeah, so this is a notion originally proposed by Milton Friedman.
Quite controversial.
Yeah, but although they did, in fact, implement it as earned income tax credit, which is sort of effectively a negative income tax for low-earning working families. Which is the closest thing we have to that in the U.S. But, for example, in Norway or in Saudi Arabia, oil-rich countries, there is actually a stipend paid to,
every citizen.
Yeah, to every citizen. And the thing that was interesting, Autor's point, which I thought was a really important one, he said the difference between Norway and Saudi Arabia is the esteem in which work is held. He said Norway has one of the highest labor force participation rates in the world. Everybody works; they just don't work all that much. Versus in Saudi, 90% of non-government jobs are carried out by guest workers from other countries because most work is defined as beneath people. And the people who are working in the government sector with sinecure kind of jobs. And you look at that, and here's two very different scenarios of how we could handle a future in which there is abundance. Because that's one of the possibilities when we look at the world we could build with AI, the world we could build with robotics, the world we could build with technology. Is one in which we could create a lot more leisure and a lot more creativity and a lot more opportunity for people to work less. The question is, will we make those choices? Or will we, for example, continue this process that we've been in over the last few decades of increasing income inequality, where some people are taking bigger and bigger share of the pie and other people are driven more and more into an underclass. And that really worries me. And I think that it behooves all of us in technology to take those choices seriously. I think we're at a point where we as an industry have to think, first of all, about what we work on, because I think there are, in fact, a lot of problems ahead of us.
And we're solving big problems, but there's also a perception problem of this industry, particularly at this time. So when we get back from the commercial break, I want to talk about Silicon Valley's perception problem because there is a huge perception problem, especially when you start messing with people's jobs and employment when we get back on This Week in Startups. Let me stop for a moment and tell you about HostGator. You can stop thinking about the business you want to do and you can just do it. The first step is web hosting and a domain name from our friends at HostGator.com. It's a one-stop shop for your online business. You can set up WordPress, drag and drop builders, easily set up custom email addresses. They have in-house design, SEO, and PPC, pay-per-click services. So as you grow, you'll be able to easily transfer from your $4 a month shared hosting account, and you'll have dedicated services, VPS, all that great stuff, 24/7, 365-day a year live support via chat, phone, or email. We love them so much that TWiST is hosted with them. That's right. It's super affordable compared to things like Amazon. They have reliable service, and we've had a really great experience with them. It's super quick to get set up, and everything is clearly explained and very nice and neat with screenshots and everything. The first 100 TWiST listeners that sign up with the promo code TWIST25 will receive 1 year of HostGator hosting package for just $25. That's right, TWiST25 and you will receive the 1 year of the HostGator Hatchling package for just $25. This includes tons of disk space, unmetered bandwidth, MySQL databases, and multiple custom email accounts. So don't worry, if you're not one of the first 100, you can still save 30% using the promo code TWiST. Thanks again to our friends at HostGator for hosting thisweekinstartups.com and for providing all this great service to our listeners. Go ahead and thank at HostGator on your Twitter handle. Okay, thanks again, HostGator. Let's get back to this amazing program. This Week in Startups, I'm your host, Jason Calacanis, and my guest today is the one, the only, Tim O'Reilly, who you can follow on Twitter. And Tim is a brilliant thinker and writer. Of course, he started O'Reilly Media, which is all the great books and conferences and magazines that have helped so many of us make our way in the technology industry, myself included. And he also founded the O'Reilly Alpha Tech Ventures Group, which they're seed investors, and they've invested in almost 50 companies now, including Foursquare, Chartbeat, which I'm an investor in, 3DR Robotics, Misfit, Planet Labs, Betabrand, just tons of amazing investments there. And if not being a publisher and being a technologist, a publisher and an investor wasn't enough, you guys know that he also hosts the best conferences in the world, from Web 2.0, eTech, and now adding to that portfolio, Next Economy Summit taking place on November 12th and 13th. You can find out about it on O'Reilly.com/nexteconomy, next-economy. Anyway, you can Google Next Economy, and the WTF stands for What is the Future of Work? And we're talking about that today. Satya Nadella from Microsoft will be speaking, and Reid Hoffman, just amazing, high-quality speakers, I would expect nonetheless. We have a perception problem in this industry. I mean, people are really scared that artificial intelligence, self-driving cars are going to eliminate a ton of jobs, robots, and then they're worried about this continuous partial employment, on-demand employment is going to take away jobs. Yet, every decade we say that the jobs are going to go away, employment maintains. Is that actually true? Do you think that we've actually maintained the employment participation rate and that this is a non-issue? Or do you think actually all those times that people said, hey, the robots are going to take the jobs will actually come true at some point?
You know, I guess what I would say, there's a couple of things. First off, I do believe that over the long haul, there's plenty of historical evidence that technology, even as it gets rid of various jobs, people figure out how to do new things.
Right.
Again, this is an old, tired story. Everybody who's asked this question says it, but 97% of people used to work in agriculture. Now, a tiny percentage of people work in agriculture.
Yeah.
I think it's less than 2%.
Yeah.
And
completely flipped.
We did, in fact, have a period of great dislocation that lasted about 50 years.
Yeah.
So it's quite possible that we will automate away many kinds of jobs that we take for granted today, and that there will be kind of a lost generation, people who don't have the skills for new jobs that we haven't invented yet. I tend to think that if, in an odd way, that what may rescue us from that dark scenario is that we have some big ass problems barreling down at us. Climate change. The fact that the infrastructure in a lot of the developed world is aging and has not been updated for ages.
Food and water, energy.
Food, water, energy. So we actually have we have aging populations.
Aging populations, huge.
We have all of these really big problems that are actually going to require us to put all that technology to work
and
to
people.
solve those problems,
Yeah.
technology and people. And so I think that may help. But the other thing that really will help is for us to explore new models of work. The fact is, John Maynard Keynes wrote about what would be the benefit of rising productivity. He hadn't imagined that people would work less. And instead, we tend to work more. Or we've got a bipolar system where some people, in fact, often wealthy people work very hard. The
wealthiest people we know are giving up their entire lives, 60, 70 hours a week. They're maniacs.
Right.
But what is Zuckerberg doing? That kid's not taking any time off, and he's one of the richest guys on the planet.
I think about that. That's, I think, completely at odds with the notion that what will people do if they don't have to work. A certain kind of person will just they'll find things to do. But other people will not. And I do think we're going to have to solve that problem. I think we will one thing that I think we have to do is we have to dignify new kinds of things as work, because people do get self-esteem from work.
Yes.
And right now there are a lot of things that are what you can think of as part of the caring economy, for example, which are very, very high value in terms of their social impact, but very, very low value in terms of how we value them economically.
Teachers,
elder care, parents, all of these things need to be dignified as work. But also the creative economy. You think about, we have certain kinds of low-paying creative jobs that are still have a great deal of esteem. If somebody says, I'm a poet, you think, oh, that's interesting. Most poets don't make any money at all, hardly.
Right.
Somebody who's trying to break into Hollywood, says I'm an actor,
screenplay writer.
I write screenplays, whatever it might be, and the fact that their day job is waiting tables doesn't matter because we dignify that as work.
Well, they're pursuing their muse, right? There's some respect we have for that.
But think about social media. There are people who work hours a day at their social media presence.
Yes.
Whether it's on YouTube or Facebook. And some people are starting to break through there. You look at someone like John Green, who's, best-selling New York Times, young adult author, the movies made of his books, has, millions of young people following him on YouTube along with his brother Hank. He's like this new media star.
Yeah.
And, you look at something like, Hank and John do this, Hank and John Explain series. And it's like, whoa, Hank and John Explain what the hell is going on in Ukraine, and 2 million teenagers watch it. That's a new kind of job.
Right.
Or I'm totally in love with Brandon Stanton's Humans of New York. I think this is as great a piece of art as anything that anyone has done. It
goes back to this Kevin Kelly 1,000 True Fans theory. I'm sure you know about that.
Yeah.
Maybe for the audience who doesn't. Kevin said, hey, if 1,000 people love your work and you can get them to sell out, they can each pay you $10 a month or $1 a month or whatever it winds up being, $5 a month you could pay for your existence on the planet. And it's actually come to manifest itself specifically on YouTube, Twitter, and blogs.
Yeah, and I think there are more and more people who are starting to make a living that way. But I also think we have to put that in the context of something like a guaranteed basic income. If we paid people enough to live on, then you wouldn't actually have to make as much at that for it still to be worthwhile.
So if everybody in the country got $1,000 a month as their basic income, the concept of being homeless by necessity as opposed to choice, like I'm not counting people who want to live on the street or are mentally ill or drug addicted, sadly, but you could find an apartment in the suburbs for $500 a month and live off of $500 of food. It wouldn't be the most posh existence, certainly.
The question is whether people will do that. And I think there's a fair amount of evidence that unless we start to dignify certain things as work, this is kind of going back to the lesson from Norway, then you end up with people who are passive and checked out.
Guaranteed basic income. If you were president, would you just say, hey, let's take all welfare and all this food stamps and everything, just put it all to a bucket and then just give everybody $1,000 a month? And how would you go about implementing something like that? Because I do think Americans are anti-handout in their mind, anti-welfare. It feels un-American to, I think, most people.
Yeah. I think, first off, implementation matters. We saw that with healthcare.gov. That's kind of the whole message of Code for America, which is an organization that I'm on the board of and that my wife started, focusing on how do we actually implement government programs that work as opposed to just kind of spray and pray, which is what most government programs are. Let's put out a bunch of dollars towards something and don't measure it, and just keep doing it even if it doesn't work.
Don't measure it. Please don't measure it. We don't want to know how ineffective
So I do feel like there are a lot of questions there before I would say yes. But I would also start by saying I'm not sure that's where I would start. I think the place that I would start in tackling some of the problems that we have are actually in tax incentives, which right now are heavily weighted towards certain kinds of activities. For example, there's been a number of studies done recently about stock buybacks crowding out productive investment by companies. You know, if you're a CEO whose compensation is tied to stock options, you know, you have behind door number one a sure thing. Behind door number two, you have let's invest in this business and maybe it'll work and maybe it won't.
Yeah, buying back the stock means a smaller pool, which means the price goes up.
That's right. So there are things like that where we have a bunch of you know, built-in incentives that lead people to do the wrong thing. And I think the very first thing I would do is start looking at so many of the programs that we have today. You know, we see this, for example, in the whole discussion of for-profit colleges. You know, here's this well-intentioned program. Let's subsidize students, you know, student loan program. And of course, all these parasites come in, you know, for-profit schools or even existing schools. They drive up tuition. They're basically soaking the taxpayer to build their business. And it's not a program that actually works. It could have been a program that worked if, for example, they said, okay, you know, you think about this is one of the ideas that I would love to see government adopt is this outcomes-based law and regulation.
So
you know,
an example
well, just think about it for a minute. If you know, Google sets out, they have a big regulatory system, you know, called search quality. Yeah. And their goal is to give people good results. And they're changing the rules all the time when they see that the results aren't good. Yeah. Government, on the other hand, tends to create a policy and then implement it, and there's no feedback loop to improve it. So as soon as they saw that, oh my gosh, there's all these for-profit schools where the graduation rates are crappy, the loan repayment rates are crappy, people are not actually getting a better job as a result of going there. Yeah. You know, why are we still funding that? You know, and it would be very simple to actually, you know, said if we had designed this to say, you know, if you don't have a good graduation rate, you're not eligible, you know, and
you have to graduate 80% to continue.
Yeah, you have to graduate them. They have to get jobs.
They have to recommend it.
That's
How about
right.
that? Just do NPS score.
There's so many things like that.
You put NPS score at the end of a University of Phoenix degree.
Yeah.
And boy, would they change how they do business, right? So if somebody comes back from the war, they take this IT degree and they say, would you recommend it to a friend? And they give it less than a 7 or 8.
And so that kind of gets into kind of the topic of, you know, what could we learn from, as businesses, from some of the on-demand companies. Yeah. I was having some fascinating conversations recently with Stefan Castriel, who's the CEO of Upwork, the company that was formed out of Odesk and Elance.
Yeah, I actually just used it recently and had a great experience.
And it's interesting because you hear government, you know, education folks talk about matching up people with skills and, you know, what's the path of, you know, education for jobs. And Upwork is doing this at high velocity and has been doing it for years. I was very eye-opening when they told me they're doing 100,000 hours of assessment a month on their platform.
Assessment to just see if people are qualified to do certain jobs.
That's right, because and their notion is they want to assess you, and they do something that you never hear government people talk about, which is one of the things they try to do is to discourage people from applying for jobs for which they are not qualified.
Perfect. Yeah.
Because if you apply, it's a waste of your time and it's a waste of the employer's time.
The outcome, as you said earlier, would be bad for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. They're focused on outcomes. It's a great example. But they also are tracking, okay, well, here's a big pool of, we have too many workers. The example that Stefan gave was like a few years ago. They had too many Java developers, not enough Android developers. They could see the path, you know, was not that much training to get people from being a Java developer to being an Android developer. So they basically were pushing people. Here's, you know, the educational path that will let you go from making this hourly rate to making that hourly rate. And so they've been doing this stuff, and it's this incredible laboratory for, you know, what the workforce of the future could look like. As Stefan says, you know, the average, you know, tenure of a job in corporate America, as you know, shown on LinkedIn, is about 2 years now. And for us, it's 2 days. So we have this incredible velocity of work where you can learn these things. And so I look at this and I go, wow, every company in America should be, studying what's happening at Upwork, which is why I'm excited to have Stefan come talk to us about this at the, the Next Economy Summit. Similarly, we have the ability for even traditional companies to start asking themselves, what do we do that's on demand? You look at Instacart and you go, okay, well, in one sense, you look at it, it's just this, the Uberization of grocery shopping. But it is also a way for existing grocery stores to participate in this new economy. When Instacart started, they were just this, this independent company that was taking margin by marking up prices. And now they actually make deals and they have storefronts. And effectively, this is a way for the local grocery to compete with, Amazon Fresh. Yeah. And, and I have to say, you look at that and you go, oh, okay, so I'm an existing business. How would I add an on-demand component? Yeah. I'm a hospital. How would I add on-demand to my elder care? There's so many kinds of businesses where the techniques that are used by some of the on-demand companies could be used to enhance an existing business. And again, that's part of what I'm hoping to do with this Next Economy Summit, is to help companies understand that this isn't just, wow, there's a bunch of these crazy companies in Silicon Valley, these startups that are doing things that I don't understand. It's like, no, actually, this is teaching us something about the potential future shape of the economy. And just as, again, going back to 2004 when we did that, Web 2.0 summit, and we started saying things like, guess what, data is going to be the new source of competitive advantage, and now, 10 years later, we have this Strata conference, which is called the Business of Data, with tens of thousands of people at it, and thousands of vendors who are chasing that, and every company in America has to have a data science competency. And I think in a similar way, there are a lot of things in this on-demand economy that we're really going to actually have to teach to traditional businesses. They're either going to be disrupted, or they're going to learn. And I think I actually tend to hate the cult of disruption in Silicon Valley.
It's not my thing.
I
do the launch festival, not the disrupt conference.
Because I really think you started out with disrupt, but
TechCrunch 50 technically. But luckily, I got out of that relationship.
Yeah.
Talk about a dysfunctional relationship.
I think that we have to get beyond disruption and really focus on what we want in our economy. And what I think there's a set of things. I want great new services for consumers because that really matters. I think we have to understand that we need things to be better for workers. Nick Hanauer has been a real inspiration to me on this. I don't know if you know this guy. He was the first non-family investor in Amazon. Then he funded a Quantive, which sold to Microsoft for $6 billion. So he's a very rich guy. And back at TEDU in 2012, I think, he gave this rant. He said, look, I'm a rich guy, and I'm sick and tired of hearing that capital creates jobs. He said only one thing creates jobs, and that's customers. And if we don't, and we've been screwing workers for so long that they're not going to afford to be able to afford to be our customers anymore.
Yeah, the minimum wage is kind of crazy in this country. What would you do with the minimum wage when you look at that? Because it does seem like you have specific cities now that are setting their own, and you have a ridiculous. Talk about polarization of wealth. The polarization of costs to just living expenses is so radical that what you get for $1,000 a month across this country could be a mansion or a shoebox.
No, I think that's totally true. And so the minimum wage probably needs to be very different in different locations. And I've been talking again to a bunch of labor economists, and one of the points they make is that in a lot of parts of the country, 15 is probably too high. The way they think about it is, what percentage of the median wage is the minimum wage? And by
what
that
percentage of the median wage? The wage directly in the 50%
Yeah.
is the average, is the minimum.
Is the minimum.
Got it.
And
Half?
they said by historical, well, again, I don't know
Yeah.
what the percentage number is, but by historical averages, at past periods when it was the median wage, the minimum wage now by that calculation should be about $12.
Got it. So
but
we're significantly behind it.
yeah, so we're significantly behind, but 15 is ahead. And I think 15 is going to be great in big cities.
Yeah,
but
Seattle,
you think
San
about
Francisco,
you
New
think
York.
about if that were a national minimum wage.
Oh,
and
you
think
kill
about,
industry in certain cities.
In certain places, it would in fact be punishing. That being said, economists also say if the median wage had kept pace with productivity, which is a very different calculation,
Right.
the minimum wage would be about 23.
Ah.
So the fact is that wages in general have not kept pace with productivity,
Which
because
would make sense,
which is this whole thing about we've had excessive returns to capital and
excessive returns to the founders of companies.
That's right.
And you have massive cash balance sheets. So
That's
where
right.
did all the cash go? It went to the cash balance sheets of these top companies,
That's
and
right.
it went to the executives.
That's right, and increasingly into the financial system.
And you don't have to be like a hippie, rebalance society to believe that. The statistics are the statistics. It's ridiculous how much cash some of these companies have, and how much cash.
I think the real point is that we've created a system. Clay Christensen, wrote a paper called "The Capitalist Dilemma," which is really about how this does become a problem for society. And we've started, in some ways, we have created a set of incentives that say, all the returns should go to shareholders, and as few as possible of the returns should go to workers. We try to minimize work at every turn. And I think that's self-defeating at some point, because those workers are also customers. And if they don't get paid, you end up with these funny distortions, and that's where I think the
Apple Store employees can't afford an Apple Watch.
That's right. Well, and not even that. People who work at Burger King can't afford. It's like it's like an
the
hour.
Starbucks employee cannot afford Starbucks.
Yeah, exactly. And we actually have to fix that as a society.
It was interesting to see Apple get shamed by that, because they were at some point, I guess they were paying the Apple stores became the most profitable real estate on per square footage, and they were like way down, like a number 100 or something in terms of how much they were paying the in-store employees. It was quite embarrassing for them. But they to Tim Cook's credit, he does seem to be very cognizant of this kind of issue.
And I think in general, companies are getting it. One of our speakers at the summit is an MIT professor named Zeynep Ton, who wrote a book called The Good Jobs Strategy, which is why it's actually better for companies to invest in their workers. And again, going back to Instacart, that's a simple example of that. Yes, they made some of their workers into employees. And it's really not about the W-2 versus 1099 issue. It's really about, if you're an in-store shopper, there were a set of things, some of which were the result of bad labor law policy. For example, if you give them training, then they're more considered to be employees, so we can't train them, which means that we have worse results. So they were like, okay, but if we make them employees, we can show them how to pick a ripe avocado, how to pick a ripe melon, and the customers are going to be happier. But if we kept them, they kind of kept the drivers on demand, because they have this sort of the swarming benefit of a marketplace.
I have to be careful, because obviously I'm an investor in Uber, which every time I say that, people say you're showing off. No, it's just I have to let people know in the conversation that I have a pony in the race here. But it does seem that there's a large contingent of Uber drivers, let's just take Uber out of the picture, Lyft, Uber, ride-sharing drivers, that want to work on demand. They change their 75% or something, change their weekly average by more than 25% a week. They really want to do that. So should they, what is your opinion on this 1099 versus W-4 debate? Does it need to be a new class of people? Does there need to be a new set of rules where 1099 people maybe have their taxes taken out, or if they hit a certain number of hours a year, they get a certain healthcare benefit? How would you, if you, again, got the broad brush and were president of the United States, how would you change it if you could automatically say, hey, here's a new idea for that group of on-demand employees? How would you change it?
I think I would just erase the W-2 versus 1099 concept. Well, maybe that's not entirely true, because there is a class of true 1099 sort of fully self-employed without, dependence on a platform kind of worker. So maybe it is a third class.
Yeah.
But
because there are people who might use 3 or 4 services in a week.
Yeah. Well, but that's fine. I mean, if you are somebody who's on a platform or use 3 or 4 services a week, the ideal should be that people pay in proportionally. And there's been 2 proposals I've seen. One, actually 2 versions of the same one. One came from Nick Hanauer and David Rolfe of the SEIU. The other came from Stephen Hill with New America. And they're both kind of a portable benefits approach. That is, each employer would pay in their fair share. If you're 20% of somebody's time, you pay in 20% of the benefits. This is not hard today.
It's all tracked.
It would be a hard problem in
minute.
the past, but it's all tracked now. So you could, in fact, have a new program where everybody paid in. And then you'd erase this problem that we have in W-2 right now, where the 30th hour suddenly makes people very expensive, which is why all these low-wage employers, even well-intentioned ones like Starbucks, tend to try to keep people under 29 hours, under 30 hours, because their costs go way up. And if we had portable benefits, that would solve it.
Such an easy solution, because if you, at somewhere like Instacart or any ride-sharing service or delivery service or on-demand economy, they could just look at the hours per week. Everybody has some form that comes out. Here's how many hours, here's how many dollars.
Yeah.
You could either average it on hourly, you could average it on the dollar amount.
Well, but it does sort of change the way we would think about some of these systems, because they would be centered on the individual rather than on the company.
Yeah, it would require infrastructure.
That kind of leads us back in the path of how do we think about companies in the future? Increasingly, they are becoming, there is obviously a core of committed full-time workers, but the workforce in a lot of jobs has become deconstructed in some ways that I don't think people are fully aware of.
Explain.
Well, when you go to a hotel, you kind of assume, for example, that all the workers there work for that hotel chain.
Sure. They're all married workers. They're not?
But they may not be. The food service workers may work for one subcontractor. The maids may work for another subcontractor. So there's this whole network of labor suppliers, and so there's this sort of shadowy the economy that we see and that we expect and understand as consumers is not the way the economy actually works.
That's true.
And what's really interesting is a lot of these companies, I hate to say, could be disrupted by better models for bringing a true labor marketplace, because that's the thing that's really interesting and innovative, I think, about some of the on-demand companies, that if we were sort of to force everybody over to W-2, would be undercut. And that is, they really are marketplaces. When Uber wants more drivers, they raise the price.
It's brilliant.
And people hate that, but they obviously accept it. Or they wouldn't be doing it.
Accepting it. Yeah.
And the thing that I look at when
do you want to get a cab in the rain, or do you?
Exactly. How much are you willing to pay?
And if you're going to, a music festival and you want the car, or it's New Year's Eve, would you rather the drivers take off on New Year's Eve and celebrate themselves, or celebrate on Thanksgiving, or would you rather they be available? Yeah. Just like store workers get time and a half, where you pay a little bit more when you go to Mother's Day at a restaurant.
Well, typically though, a lot of that is insulated from the consumer. And it is sort of interesting, though, because they have solved that supply problem largely.
Yeah. And you know what? It's so great when you can just wait. You can wait it out.
That's right.
It's like I used to, when I was broke and I was living in New York and I needed to take a cab, I would always walk a mile first and then I'd get in the cab.
Yeah.
Cut my cab costs by a third or something.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that people will adapt to it. But I look at that and I go, this is actually a great innovation in the labor market. And how do we figure out other ways to bring workers to bear when we need them? And I think if you can put in place some of the right protections, because I do think when I think about an algorithm or an algorithmic management, there's different kinds of algorithms, and this was again the point.
Optimized for different purposes.
Yeah. So if you look at the scheduling algorithms in a lot of the scheduling software that's used by McDonald's or Walmart or scheduled workers, the prime goal is to minimize labor costs.
Yes. Minimize time and a half.
That's right. And well, not even that, to actually keep people below 29 hours so they don't even have to pay health benefits. And not to have more workers than you possibly need. So it's kind of like, we're so cool, we're so real time, we're so big data that we used to think we needed you for 8-hour shifts. Now we know we need for 2 hours here and 3 hours here, and we'll let you know when we need you.
Yeah, we know when the dead zones are.
Yeah, and that's terrible for workers. They can't schedule other work because they don't have visibility. And you look at that, and here's this algorithm which is optimized for company profit, and you look at the algorithm that drives a marketplace, any of these marketplace companies, and you go, the algorithm is designed to maximize customer satisfaction. So, for example, what drives surge pricing right now is
how long to get a car.
Is how long to get the car.
Yeah.
And you go, well, could that be better? Yes, because there are other issues. For example, congestion. What if so many Ubers are flooding in that it increases congestion, which was de Blasio's argument. First of all, that's knowable now.
Yeah.
And so Uber should be opening up their data and
they did.
And saying, look, we know what the answer is here. But you could also say, oh, well, if in fact it's taking longer, that's going to decrease customer satisfaction. So we'll tune the algorithm. Google started with, moving back to another famous algorithmic company, they started with PageRank, and now they use hundreds of factors to make search results better.
The number one of which is, can they get an ad up there?
Yeah. Well, no, it's not number one. I think they're still focused on user benefit, and I think that, to me, when you have marketplace algorithms that are being tuned for customer satisfaction, and this real supply-demand of labor, where you basically say, okay, if people aren't willing to pay it, they're not going to pay it, so demand goes down and the surge ends, right? Mm-hmm. If people are willing to pay, then you're looking for that perfect equilibrium. Yeah. And a marketplace is a super interesting idea that, and I think it's a much smarter use of an algorithm than one that's effectively monitoring and micromanagement. Instead, it really is building a market where things happen.
It feels like the future is going to be defined by how much we can trust that algorithm.
That's right.
And how transparent the algorithm is. I mean, one of the things we bring up Google, and you're friendly with some folks at Google, me too. I mean, let's face it, they really did a number on Yelp by taking them out. Yelp had the best reviews in the system, and they replaced them with their own homegrown.
Yeah.
And it was proven, through a lot of different studies, including Columbia and other people, hey, look, Google promoted their stuff over, Yelp's to, grow their service. So it wasn't actually in the best use of users.
No, I actually wrote about this back in 2007. I had done an event called Next Money. Next Money is another event we're doing now. It was called...
you got so many events you can't remember them, Tim.
I can't remember. We are doing a Next Money event, which is about the current changes in the financial system. Yeah. This was I can't remember what it was called, but anyway, it was
Next Algorithm.
No, it was basically about what do we learn from Wall Street, because I was thinking about the internet's becoming an economy. Where else do we have big network economies? Oh my God, financial markets. What do they teach us? And one of the things that I learned, and that I wrote this piece about in 2007, was called trading for their own account. What we learn is that banks used to be enablers of other people, and then they started trading against their customers. And I predicted that would in fact happen. With these internet companies. And sure enough, Google originally was an enabler for everybody, and then they started trading against some of them. And I think that is a But I still think on the whole, Google has done a pretty good job. It's a tough call. I look at something like that and I go, yes. And first of all, I can still use Yelp, and I do. But a lot of the information, it is more convenient for me, to go get it in Google. Yeah. It's right there. Yeah. And there is an ecosystem call, which is the one that I would. I still would make that appeal to Google, is if you vitiate the ecosystem,
which they did,
eventually that will come back and bite you.
Well, they have. Now content people will work with them. They don't want to have the AdSense on the site because Google's putting their own shopping results, their own stock quotes, their own weather, their own sports scores. They basically took all those partners, and I was one of them with two different companies, so I'm a little bitter on the subject and close to it. But And I can be honest about that because I was like, hey, guys, I told them, I was like, we made $25 million in AdSense together over 2 companies.
Yeah.
And then you just totally destroyed my business.
Yeah.
And their result is like, well, it was the algorithm. I'm like, you wrote the algorithm.
Yeah.
You know, and I think a lot of people felt like they were double crossed with them. The same thing with Microsoft, right? It seems like when they get to a certain scale, companies, they have to eat their own. They have to just say, we're going to just absorb the entire ecosystem.
Yeah,
although Apple seems different.
Again, that kind of goes back to this sort of notion of long-term versus short-term thinking.
Yeah.
I tried to, my sort of lesson, which I've framed as create more value than you capture, is
famous saying you had,
a really good test, because if you don't do that, eventually your ecosystem dries up.
Create more value than you take out.
That's right. And if you
coined this, right? This concept?
Actually, it was...
Because I credit it to you all the time.
It is, yes. Although, a little background.
Yeah, give me the backstory on that.
The backstory on that, it was actually coined by the guy who was at the time my VP of marketing. It was back around 2000. We had a company retreat. And I was telling the story about... how more than one internet billionaire has told me, I started with an O'Reilly book, and I said, and we got $30. and Brian laughed and said, create more value than you capture, and we went, that's a great line. But it is a really good test, and it's something if you think about an ecosystem. If you take more out than you put back, eventually your soil gets depleted, and you can watch it in technology. Companies that tried to own it all, eventually squeeze too tight,
slips through your fingers.
And Microsoft, when you think about the PC, originally it was this huge opportunity for everybody. There were lots and lots of software companies.
WordPerfect.
That's right.
VisiCalc,
and then Microsoft basically started to eat the ecosystem, and eventually it became much less interesting. People went somewhere else. The internet grew up because, hey, there was a bigger opportunity there. And I think the same thing will happen, to all the companies.
It's happening to Google to a certain extent with apps, right? I mean, if you look at apps, they're like more interesting to people. And
that's
apps,
right.
I mean, is it heartbreaking for you after all these decades of working on the open web, open standards, you're such a big proponent of open source and open standards, that the entire industry is now trying to close up and make walled gardens, and Zuckerberg wants everybody inside of Facebook, even telling journalists to put your content inside of Facebook?
Yeah.
It sounds like something that is dystopian to guys like us, I would suppose, that people would give up their websites and just give them to Facebook, just give them inside the Apple, apps, and just cede control over their destiny and make apps that have to be written 3 times instead of just an open web. Is that just totally depressing to you?
No, not really. The reason why it's not is because it's almost it just means the interesting things are going to happen somewhere else.
Yeah.
And if you look at history, it's almost like a dialectic between open and closed. And when something gets closed down, it becomes less interesting, and all the interesting new people go somewhere else. So
Oakland.
but no, I'm just thinking about, for example, all this amazing stuff happening in genomics and neuroscience, and there's going to be all kinds of things that we haven't ever imagined, or for that matter, the maker movement and hardware.
Which you obviously started, people may not know, but you started Maker Magazine, which is a huge independent business now with 100 or 200 employees and doing tens of millions of dollars in revenue, I understand.
Yes, that's correct.
It's correct.
Exactly.
You just started that and you spun it out.
That's right.
It's amazing. You're very prolific.
What
do you credit that prolificness to? You just have a lot of ideas and you start a lot of stuff and you don't care if it fails?
Well, it's sort of funny because we're not generally, I'm a serial entrepreneur with one company, which is a little bit atypical. It's not entirely true.
Well, no, you have
Maker Media is now a separate company,
and Alpha Ventures
or Alpha Tech Ventures, separate company. Safari Books Online. Was a separate company. We spun it out in 2000, made a joint venture with Pearson. We bought them out, and it's now being reintegrated into O'Reilly. So, that one's come back. But the bulk of what I've done, and of course we spun out other companies over the years and sold them, but I at bottom, in some ways I've just reinvented O'Reilly many times over the years. We were originally a tech writing consulting company, then we became a publisher, then we became an events business, and now we have a really big integrated media business and a really big subscription business. And our by the piece business is actually, which is what people used to think of as publishing, is actually now pretty small. So,
and
not I mean, relative to the overall the total company.
And what's very interesting as well to me as a publisher, having like Silicon Alley Reporter is no more, and now I have launched my second act in terms of publishing, but watching other people, Red Herring, Industry Standard, our friend John Battelle, who you were partners with, all of these things they go away. You've survived all these boom bust cycles. What do you accredit that to? You just raised a ton of money in that first boom cycle, I think I remember.
No, we never raised money.
You never raised money, did you? Or you just wildly profitable during that boom and you were savvy?
We have always been a company that sells stuff to people. I mean,
that they can use.
And actually, this is my partner at O'Reilly Alpha Tech Ventures, Bryce Roberts, has been focused on this new thing called Indie VC, which is this notion that there are companies who should not actually have to raise money. And if you think about O'Reilly, I started with $500 in used furniture. That was all the capital we ever had.
Bootstrap.
We totally bootstrapped it because we sold things to real customers, and there's a way that keeps you honest. We had some rough moments. When there was a big industry downturn in the mid '80s, early '80s, '84, that I nearly went out of business. But that's when we launched our publishing business. And that it wasn't what saved us, but we just did something new when we didn't have enough consulting work, and that led us into that. And we had another near-death experience in the dot-com bust.
You had just built that big building, didn't you?
Exactly. We just built big buildings, and all of a sudden
the big shrine in Sebastopol, where food camp goes on.
But I. Because we've been focused on doing real things for real people, we never really got too far out ahead of our skis. The one thing that I do wish, and there's a piece I wrote called "How I Failed," which is on LinkedIn, which really describes this. The thing I really regret was that I didn't actually focus enough on cash flow rather than. I was just into like, hey, I'm having fun. I'm going to grow. I'm going to do these things, projects, and
concepts, ideas.
And running a positive cash flow business makes a huge difference. My COO today was formerly my CFO. Is really focused on running a tight ship, and I really encourage startups to do that because even though money seems easy right now, it won't always be.
No, we know that.
And I think back on, all through the decade of the 90s. Just to give you an example in my publishing business, our average revenue per title we published in the 90s was, for the publishing business was, $250,000 per book. That's average, and we had many, many multi-million-dollar books. Our average revenue, after the dot-com bust, the decade, 2002, and in that period when that average revenue per title was $250,000, we were always hemorrhaging cash. We ended up, we owned, AOL stock in 1990, after we sold GNN in 1995, which was the
Global
first
Network
web
Navigator.
Yeah, and I had to sell it because I needed the money. We had Google stock from the sale of Blogger, which we'd funded. Had to sell it, way too early because we needed the cash. And yet in that next decade, when our average revenue per title, the book market fell apart, average revenue per title, it went down to like $60,000. We put tens of millions of dollars in the bank. You
just understood how to make it profitable.
Well, no, it was profitable before, but it was not cash flow positive. Those two things are not the same thing, and people need to understand that. And
unit economically profitable, but you have to look at the overhead of the business.
Well, no, it's not even that. It's there are things you do, when you do accrual accounting, that. Like inventory, for example. We moved to no inventory. We actually got accepted higher unit costs, which would create nominally lower, profitability. But all of a sudden, we didn't need cash anymore, right? So we moved to print on demand, very early in that cycle. And
so all our books are printed on demand.
Oh yeah.
So if somebody orders one, it gets printed. If they don't order, it doesn't get printed.
Well, I mean,
print 100 at a time, 1,000 at a time.
it depends really. I mean, we basically made a deal with Ingram, which is
Sure.
where they actually produce whatever amounts we need, and sometimes it's a lot, and sometimes it's not very many. But we got one unified price, and that was sort of something that Laura negotiated, and it became such a competitive advantage for us that we ended up building a distribution business for other publishers. We also had built a bunch of internal sort of an ebook workflow, which meant that we could also build an ebook distribution business. And so we created new opportunities through effectively figuring out how to be more efficient in that market. And that's really something that any startup can do. And again, it's why, when you start thinking about, what should companies be thinking about, whether you're a startup or whether you're an existing company, there's so much to learn from the people who are doing things best. And so, again, we're going to come back to this Next Economy Summit. Part of what we're trying to do is bring in people and say, okay, what can we learn from these people? Laszlo Bock, the VP of People Analytics at Google. How does Google manage? Reid Hoffman. Okay, how do you think about your relationship with employees? So we're really trying to help companies understand how to harness technology in the right way. Not only to improve their results, but to improve the lives of their workers, to give them the ability to tackle interesting new problems. I mean, I think, again, going back to O'Reilly and our history, we have been able to go into interesting new things and able to invest in the future because we're running a tight ship.
It's amazing. Listen, you've been one of my heroes forever. You know that. You seem particularly happy and content right now, Tim. Am I reading that correct? Are you happy and content in life?
Oh, absolutely. There's so many, the thing that I find most satisfying is making a difference. And if I look back on, on my career, the thing I like the best is shaping how people think in a way that becomes useful to them. And a lot of the work that I did on fresh thinking about how government should work, which sort of led to Code for America, which also happened to lead to me getting married to Jen Polka, which is a wonderful, good thing in my life.
Yeah. Living out in Oakland now. I see on your public streams.
And all the work that she's done to make government better when she was at the White House and at Code for America. That's really kind of the fulfillment of a set of ideas I started working with in 2008, 2009, 2010. Looking at how the ideas that came out of the Web 2.0 Summit turned into what we now do with our Strata events. Thinking about how we built an event for what became DevOps. That term DevOps was coined at an O'Reilly conference. The way we sort of reshaped the narrative around open source and made it part of the narrative. That's something that again, it goes back to the create more value than you capture. I think that we have become, a guide to how to think about the future in a way that, that helps companies to do better. And then, of course, we follow up with specific actionable, here's how the technology actually works through our business, through our books, through our events, through, subscription service like Savari Books Online, which despite the name now is actually very much a video learning service as well as a book service. And
you're throwing a lot of seeds.
Yeah.
You're like the Johnny Appleseed of this industry, like tons of seeds. Who was your mentor? Who did you look up to coming up? Did you like Stuart Brandt maybe?
Stuart Brandt, definitely. Actually,
tell everybody who even Stuart Brandt is, because I just got to have dinner with him again, and God, it's like I keep reading about him, and I just think, wow, I wish I had been there for seeing that Whole Earth catalog.
Yeah, Stuart Brandt was the creator of the Whole Earth catalog and the Well, and a lot of other things back. But and then he had a magazine called Co-Evolution Quarterly, and I have to say, one of my proudest moments was when somebody asked, Stuart, one time, who was the him of today? And he said, well, maybe Tim O'Reilly.
Wow.
So that was great.
High
because
praise.
The one time I actually tried to get something published in Coevolution Quarterly back in the 70s when I was still in college, and it got accepted, but it never got published. And
Nice.
But
Is it?
Stuart's definitely an inspiration for me.
Anybody else?
Well, I mean, there are a lot of people who I consider inspiring. So I'm not sure that's
No, I just meant on specific on the radical publisher. Because listen, I have a little bit of the publisher in me as well, and the event organizer. It's a certain type of person who likes to be I find. You tell me if it's similar for you, but there's a certain type of person who wants to manifest a conversation about what's important in the world, whether it's in a magazine or a book or an event. It's a certain type of person, I find. But John Battelle, our mutual friend, is like this. Esther Dyson is like this. It's a certain type of person, isn't it?
Well, yes, absolutely. And one person, obviously, who I really should single out is Dale Doherty, who worked with me for many, many years.
He was your right-hand man.
Yeah, he was really my right-hand man. And everything from he was the guy who kind of said, "Hey, pay attention to the World Wide Web." Got us to do
good call.
GNN, the Global Network Navigator, which
was the first internet, one of the first internet services.
Yeah, it really was. It was certainly the first web portal. It was also the first site on the web to do advertising. So it was a really pioneering site. That was sort of, with Dale. Then he was actually the guy who came up with the name Web 2.0 for all these ideas that I was talking about. So even though a lot of the ideas were, and then he also launched Make Magazine and Maker Faire, and then we spun that out in 2012. So he's now, he's actually brought in Greg Brockway from who was the CEO of TripIt, which was one of our portfolio companies at OATV, is now the CEO of Maker Media. Dale's the executive chairman. But Dale, is really just such a wonderful thinker. Again, we've kind of partners in crime in terms of thinking about big ideas and shaping things. Now he's really still so focused on the sort of this maker revolution, and not just how that's becoming a business, but also how it's a revolution in education and how we should think about learning by doing.
That could wind up being the biggest brand you ever did.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Maker Faire, hundreds of thousands of people show up every year,
and there's thousands of them or hundreds of them. I go to Maker Fairs all the time.
That's right. Oh yeah, they're all over the world.
Every weekend there's one.
Syndicated.
Yeah.
So it really is a fantastic media brand, and so yes.
So much going on. Everybody, make sure you go to the Next Economy Summit. It's November 12th and 13th. You can go to O'Reilly.com and read about it there. And you can follow O'Reilly Next on the Twitter. Tim O'Reilly, of course, on Twitter is Tim O'Reilly. I just want to tell you, Tim, listen, you're always very generous to me. I always appreciate that. And I copied it, like everything you did coming up. You've been a tremendous inspiration to me. People like you and Esther, God, I owe the world to you guys, because you put this blueprint out there for me to copy and to come up, 10 years, 15 years after you. And I just thank you for doing that.
Well, you've done a great job on that.
Listen, you know what? It's easier when you're standing on the shoulders of giants. You guys did these 600-person events, 1,000-person events. PC Forum was thousands of dollars. I could never afford it. Esther just, gave me a miracle, like a Dead show, and gave me a ticket. To me, like going to your shows back in the day was like me getting a ticket to the Dead. And it really meant a lot. So I appreciate it.
All right.
All right. We'll see you next time. Hey everybody, it's Jason Calacanis. And today, a special treat for all of you. PagerDuty has been one of our biggest supporters. And one of the things I love to do with the big supporters who have products that we use is just sit down with the product manager and ask them, what have they built and why and what's working, right? So I could read a product, ad, but what an amazing opportunity it is, instead of just doing an ad on This Week in Startups, to take one of our supporters, all the whitelisted advertisers, which are the people who have products that we use in my companies, and then just hear directly from the product manager. It's better than just having an ad, right? Well, today, Dave Cliff, who is the product manager, but you have a fancy title. Tell us the fancy title.
Well, it's product Sherpa.
Product Sherpa. I love it. Which, like, Shervit's company is Sherpa Ventures. A Sherpa is, of course.
Yeah, someone who helps execs reach the top of the mountain, right?
Love it.
Yeah.
So, listen, PagerDuty, great company. A couple of my companies use it. Love it. What does PagerDuty do? Just basically, if you were to explain it to somebody who is the founder of a company, a high-growth company, let's say it's a non-technical founder, business founder, sales founder, how would you explain what PagerDuty does and why it's worth paying for?
Yeah, PagerDuty's an operations performance platform really focused around incident management and on-call. And really, the core value add that PagerDuty brings is making sure that you get the information about what's busted in your system, whether it's in the middle of the night, server's on fire, or disk is filling up, whatever it happens to be, that information gets to the person that it needs to quickly.
Why does this product need to exist in the world? Because don't server monitoring software systems already send alerts? Why did you create PagerDuty? Why is it necessary to have this layer on top of these other systems?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, a big part of the reason that PagerDuty is there is so that you can actually support on-call escalation, make sure that it gets to the right person, and that you actually have some redundancy built into your alerting. Just like you want redundancy, in terms of how you architect and engineer your systems, you want that in terms of your on-call process as well. And so we plug into all those great monitoring systems and make it so that if you're doing that across 4 different monitoring systems, you don't want to have to.
What are the top monitoring systems that people use, and what does the average startup have? Let's say a startup makes it to $10 million a year in revenue and has 30, 40, 50 employees.
Yeah.
How many monitoring systems would they have? How many engineers would they have on duty? In a company like that?
Yeah, for a company that size, I mean, easily 4 or 5 different monitoring systems. I mean, the reality is that you're using them for all different sorts of things, right? You've got server infrastructure monitoring, something like Nagios. You got website monitoring, something like Pingdom.
Pingdom, I've used that, yeah.
Yeah, you want to use application performance monitoring, do something like New Relic or App Dynamics.
Yeah, application performance is really important. I've used New Relic because it looks at actually the code and tells you which piece of the code is borked.
Right.
We had that happen where literally somebody wrote some code for a voting system at Inside and it was recalculating too often or something. And so people were scrolling through and it was voting and it was triggering all these database calls and the whole system went down.
Yeah.
And we couldn't figure it out. Hard to find. Your
infrastructure's honestly operating the way it should be, and just happens to be application level issues that you need somebody to investigate. And so a lot of the companies, I mean, our customers of ours that are using us, I mean, they have these different levels of monitoring because they've got different teams that are responsible for different parts, or certainly as DevOps has really kind of become a thing in the industry. We definitely see cross-functional ownership across those teams and being able to operationalize.
And DevOps, for people who don't know, is what? Because there's ops.
Yes.
We all heard that before. Those are the people who manage the servers.
Yeah.
And we know what developers are. Devs are the people who write the code. So you had ops over here and you had devs over here, and they worked with each other. Sometimes they got in fights, and they blame each other. But then there's this new word, DevOps, which to me seems like a hybrid. What does it mean?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question right there, to be honest.
What does it mean?
What is DevOps? I think it is becoming one of those, one size fits all, it means everything to everyone now. But I think for me, and based on the customers that I talk to, really DevOps is just about the culture. It's about the culture of collaboration and making sure that you're not kind of just tossing things over the wall to people, and really trying to break down those silos between roles. And so the companies that we see that really embrace that are the ones that move away from kind of traditional the ops team does all the production and developers don't touch that, to more of an enabling model where operations is really kind of building tools and building some great things that really empower developers to kind of own their shit in production.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's take a look at the product. And while you're pulling it up, tell me, what does it cost, the product? But we'll pull up your computer here. Pull up Dave's computer if you don't mind. All right, here we go. We're at the dashboard.
Yeah.
So what does it cost, by the way, for PagerDuty? What is if you were this $10 million a year company with 50 to 30 developers, that means you're making let's say $30,000 a day, $25,000, $30,000 a day, which means you're making about $1,000 an hour.
Yep.
So we know the cost of downtime is $1,000 an hour at least.
Yep.
Right? Because you may have to give credits that are greater than that in some cases. If you're
Exactly.
doing a SaaS program, sometimes you have to pay 10 to 1 or 20 to 1 or something.
We have some customers that honestly downtime for their business costs them $125,000 a minute.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
$125,000 a minute. That means
minute.
they're making $6 million an hour. That's a lot. Oof.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking large scale e-commerce revenue. I mean, really, really big deal. So for them, any sort of downtime like that, they need to be looking at any precursor that could potentially prevent them from getting in a situation like that. And so that's where great monitoring and
what's the entry level price for PagerDuty?
So PagerDuty is it varies. It's a per user model. It varies basically between $9 and up to something on the order of like $100 a user per month.
Got it.
But most of our companies kind of range in between the $20 to $40 a user.
So it's
range.
like a little more expensive than Slack.
Yep.
But not much more. So if you had 20 people on your developer team, you might be paying $200 to $1,000 a month for this software.
Right.
Which would be the equivalent of $2,000 to $25,000 a year or something.
Sure.
And so if you hit 1 hour, if you avoid 1 hour of downtime or you're 1 hour quicker, depending on the client, you're probably in the black.
Right.
Which is how I look at this product. So you basically, because so much is at stake for these people who are now starting to hit scale or modest scale even, you can price it because you have so many customers below what it's actually worth. And then the difference actually goes to the company buying it.
Right.
That's what I love about SaaS.
See, you're way more of a mathematician than I am, I think. That's
No, I look at something like Slack, right? Slack charges, I think, $4 a user per month or $5 a user. So if you have a 20-person team, you're $100 a month, $1,200 a year. If you avoid one misunderstanding per year, Slack is paid for itself.
Definitely.
If you come up with one operational idea that saves $100 a month because you're talking more, it pays for itself. It's just like it's worth more. Like if we were here 20 years ago during the Microsoft and Oracle days, you'd be looking at a $400 license per person, $1,000 license per person for this level of enterprise software, and it just it's like one of the great things about cloud today is like you can put together this collection of tools so affordably. All right, show me the product here.
And you're not paying for 3 years of service before you've even used it once, right?
I mean, just no more of these 3-year contracts. Like a lot of these services will let you pay by the year and give you a discount and let you cancel and get a refund.
Right.
So it's like, well, why wouldn't you pay for the year if it in the fine print it says you can get the refund? It's amazing. Okay, show us the product here.
Cool.
This is the dashboard.
So this is the PagerDuty dashboard here, and you can see I've got a couple of incidents open here, and one of the big things that we're really excited about announcing is actually the ability to kind of control the urgency of how you need to get to an issue. So traditionally, PagerDuty has been a product where we're great at paging you in the middle of the night and making sure that we're persistent enough to wake you up and get you going on it. And so that's what
always good for developer retention.
Yeah, exactly.
Operation retention.
Well, it's funny you mention that because that's a big motivation for why we introduced this concept of low urgency incidents, because the reality is that you don't need to wake up for everything.
Right.
And this is one of the metrics that we see the best operational teams that we've been interviewing that they really want to go after is that on-call quality of life really means so much to them.
Yeah.
And so,
well, imagine you lose a developer because the system is set up improperly.
Yep.
The low stuff is the same as the high stuff, and they miss their daughter's soccer game or their wife or their husband set up a nice dinner or a movie and they got to leave, Avengers Age of Ultron in the middle.
Yep.
They don't know what the hell's going on when they get back. Who's the Scarlet Witch? It's a pain in the ass.
Yep.
Nobody wants to miss the new characters in the new Avengers.
That's
you want
for
to
sure.
know who they are.
Yeah, and it contributes to burnout. And to your point, the cost of replacing employees as a result of that, gosh, it's astronomical.
And I read the Marvel comic books, and I'm having a hard time keeping up with the universe now.
There
There's
you
so
go.
many damn characters, and then there's the same characters in 2 different movies.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Honestly.
X-Men and Avengers have the same characters played by different people. I feel like I need to bring a notepad to these films. You a fan of these films?
Of course. Isn't
It's
everyone?
amazing, isn't
Come
it?
on. Any movie where you have to where you will willingly sit through the credits in order to watch all the way till the end.
2 stingers.
Yeah.
Not even 1, 2 stingers now.
Yeah.
It's the greatest. They call them stingers.
Yeah.
That's what I love it.
I love it.
But it's like literally our childhood has now manifested itself in the greatest production of movies ever. It's like they're bringing back Star Wars on December 23rd. It looks amazing. They brought back Star Trek. They're making 17 comic book movies a year. The DC stuff is starting to look good. I was worried about that. I was worried about the Batman, Superman one. And now I'm not worried anymore because I saw this other stuff with Wonder Woman. She's going to save it.
Oh, yeah.
She looks awesome.
We can still be kids when,
Who's your favorite?
into our... Favorite. Oh my gosh.
You got a favorite comic book or favorite like in this whole like genre right now? Daredevil, Wonder Woman. Who you?
I don't know. I'm pretty excited for Deadpool, honestly. But I mean, for different reasons, I think.
Just because it's so like what? Because he's going to break the fourth wall and he looks into the camera and talks to the.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to Doctor Strange.
Oh yeah.
That's the one for me because I was a Doctor Strange fan, and it's also like bringing mysticism into the Marvel universe is kind of like how does that even fit?
Yeah.
Right. It's like, how does magic fit into the Marvel universe? Fantastic. Just like they got Daredevil and like, a blind civilian, and like, they're really killing it.
Yeah, I have 2 young kids, so I don't know if I should get them hooked on stuff like Deadpool or whatever, but I don't know. I mean,
Deadpool, wait till they're 14.
Yeah, exactly.
15. There's a couple of moments in there that are going to be a little PG-13/R. All right, listen, enough. Let's go back to the product. Show me more of the product.
Yeah. So again, we're introducing new functionality to make it so that not everything that's waking you up is the you're not just getting woken up all the time for all the critical stuff, and we really want to be able to take in all these other events and kind of broaden out and make sure that you understand what's going on holistically in your system. So you can kind of see here on the dashboard, I've got, oh my gosh, my server's on fire. Somebody's working on that. High priority. Don't worry. And then I've got a couple of low urgency things that are there. That's like, hey, your disk utilization is greater than 70%. You know what? Traditionally, companies have been having to wake people up for these sort of things if they're using PagerDuty in kind of the traditional way, and that's terrible. I mean, this is exactly the type of stuff
that's why people quit jobs.
Totally, absolutely is.
So can you set that on a granular level? So you're getting that alert from some third-party system.
Yep.
Nagios. What do you call it? Nagios?
Nagios. Yeah.
Nagios. Yeah, we have that.
Yep.
So Nagios sends this alert. Nagios sends a ton of alerts. I know because I'm on the Slack room or the HipChat room where the Nagios alerts come in. It's like Nagios is pretty.
It's noisy.
It's noisy.
Yeah.
So now you can go in and say, hey, this alert from Nagios is, 1, 2, 3, 4 in terms of priority.
Yes.
Can you also go into like what the actual alert is and say, hey, this number, 60%, 70%, 80%, 90% equal X, Y, and Z. Are you on that level of granularity yet?
We do have we do actually have that ability.
That's pretty sweet.
So yeah, you can basically take, say a warning level in Nagios, which would be say 70%, and fire that to, low urgency. Yeah, no, it doesn't need to wake anyone up, but hey, if it gets to 90%, that's a critical. Yeah. Make sure you get somebody on it. And so the way that we've structured it again is it's pretty binary right now, right? It's something is either urgent or it's not, and that's kind of the tack we took with it. And in talking with customers about it, that's really the question that they're asking is, whenever they receive an alert, is this something that I really need to be working on right now or not? And
how does the scheduling work? Because you have a bunch of developers, and I know that when I was in the IT business, we all had our on-call hours.
Yep.
It was kind of fun in the 90s because when you were on call, they paid you a little bit extra. You got like $50 or something for the weekend, which was nice. But the most exciting thing was they gave you a mobile phone.
Right.
Which back then was the big brick for $1 a minute.
Yeah.
And they told you like, yeah, you can have fun. You can use it for like up to half an hour over the weekend, even for personal stuff.
Sure.
So you get to make a personal phone call from a restaurant on your phone. It was pretty fun.
Yeah.
They just gave everybody a certain number of minutes. It was cool. So those phones and everything and those calls, how do you schedule that? And do people manage their own schedule and like trade and barter with each other their schedules?
Yeah, our scheduling actually basically allows you to if you've got a team of say 8 people, you can set them up in a weekly rotation or a follow the sun. If you've got organizations overseas where you actually do want kind of a 24/7 where people are actually on call for their livable hours, I would say. It's really nice when you have teams that can do that. But so PagerDuty scheduling supports all of that effectively. You've got all different types of schedules, flexibility to kind of set them up. I don't have any set up for this.
Yeah, for your test account. But let me ask you another question about this in terms of learning. So we hear a lot about machine learning and we hear about AI. Mm-hmm. You're creating rule sets here. you also have a big base of knowledge across many of the larger. You have some of the best customers out there.
Yeah.
Can you say some of the customer names? What are the public customer names?
Yeah,
Tell me a couple.
absolutely. Yeah, we can. I mean, we're working with with Netflix and with Twitter and with basically the companies.
So we're
that run
done.
the
Yeah,
internet.
Netflix and Twitter.
Yeah.
So you're working with about $100 billion in market cap or $50 billion in market cap. Right there, you're talking about thousands of engineers probably collectively.
Yep.
Certainly hundreds. Yeah, maybe thousands. Are you starting to learn something across all the accounts about the data? And at some point, might your product be, if people opted into it, that, hey, the ops team and the DevOps team at Twitter and Netflix and these 3 startups and whatever could say, hey, Nagios and New Relic and these guys and gals and whatever they got, like, here's what we know about this specific type of alert. Everybody's getting this alert right now. It has to do with this patch. And you could almost put an overlay of a meta ops person who's looking at all the data and saying, hey, you know what? Everybody's getting woken up tonight because of this problem in this patch that Nagios did.
Yeah.
Here's the obvious solution.
Yeah. So
is that the roadmap, or does that exist today? How does that?
I don't think that exists today, and I actually think it is absolutely a great opportunity of
it's a
really.
Holy grail.
I mean, one of the things that we love about PagerDuty customers as a whole is that they love building stuff on top of our API, and so we see huge leverage just in our API and the types of tools that people build around us. And so what we started to do is actually start to lean into that community even more and really start to kind of market the fact that, hey, other people are using it for building really interesting widgets for scheduling based on vacations, right? Like set up an intelligent schedule, or auditing your account to make sure that everyone's got a phone rule at 5 minutes, right? You got to make sure that everyone's set up.
What does it mean,
properly.
phone rule at 5 minutes?
So in that particular case, it would be like if I go over to my user profile, the benefit of PagerDuty is really that you can kind of customize your notification rules.
So we'll pull up your
to
screen
preferences.
here.
Yeah.
So I can say, like, if I don't get a call within 5 minutes, go to the next one.
Yep, exactly. So I've got the ability to kind of control. Well, I want to be phoned at this point. I want to be SMS'd at this point, and you can kind of set up your own kind of redundancy that way. It's really nice to have that flexibility where you can control. If we have some people, honestly, that some customers that set us up such that if it takes them 2 phone calls to wake up in the middle of the night, and they're still not waking up, they'll actually have their spouse's phone number on there. So
home phone if they happen to have a landline.
Exactly. Yeah, whatever it takes to get them going.
It'd be a really cool thing for you guys to do. It's like what's really great about your business. Good businesses inspire a lot of ideas. Aside from this meta DevOps in the sky, 2 ideas. One, could you provide a DevOps network of people and say, hey, you're too small of a company for, whatever it is, $100 a shift.
Yeah.
You could have your weekends covered by this person who we know is really good.
Yeah.
And then second, what about creating like a Slack room or a HipChat room or whatever, or chat IRC persistent for PagerDuty, Nagios, PagerDuty, New Relic, PagerDuty, whatever, and you just have those, and you just invite all your clients to hang out in them.
Sure.
It'd be like really cool if they could all be like just vibing with each other around each on a product by product basis, or outsourcing to you. Have you thought about those ideas?
I think one of the things we want to do with community is kind of again get people together around it, and we started doing that with actually having more community events around. We had one in San Francisco, we had another one in Austin.
Just a meetup.
Just a meetup, basically. Get people together and get them talking about on call, because it's actually one of those things that people unfortunately don't seem to talk as much about. Like they'll talk about their architecture.
Yeah.
They'll talk about, different development techniques and, certainly different software development techniques and that. But talking about on-call is, it's just, it's a necessary pain that you have to get through. Honestly, I mean, we're seeing companies that are doing it really well. And in fact, we've actually started mapping out this thing called an operational maturity score, where we can actually start to see, okay, based on these metrics, how are you in comparison to your peers?
See, that's really good. That's what I say. It's like, that's like when people talk about their architecture, that's like talking about philosophy.
Right.
And then you like talk about being a parent.
Yeah.
And like that's like parent group, mom or dad's group, where we sit here and we're like, how are you dealing with this issue?
Yes.
Like your kid wants to watch, 7 episodes of Star Wars Rebels in a row, and it's like super addicting.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've had that. And did you see the Star Wars Rebels yet?
No, I haven't.
Oh my God. It's just like, I watched the episode with my daughter.
Yeah.
and then I took her to Disneyland, and then I had to come up here to do work. And now I'm kind of thinking of like, I'm going to watch episode 2 on my own.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, am I going to watch it without my daughter now? So now it's so addicting
Yeah.
that now I'm kind of thinking I might break my rules. May have to watch 2 episodes a night till we get through this and binge watch it. But I don't know if I want to teach my daughter binge thing. There's a lot of issues here.
Yeah, see, my kids are in the, Mickey Mouse Clubhouse stage. So,
How old?
I'll get there like 3.5.
Okay, yeah.
3.5
My
and
daughter's
2.
5 now. So
Yeah.
it just becomes great when you get to that age.
Oh, yeah.
Because then your daughter wakes up and is like, can we watch Star Wars Rebels? And who is Iron Man? And who is Darth Vader? And why did he cut off his hand? It's just like, oh my God, you just totally relive your youth. And I'm like, wow, I'm gonna watch Star Wars, Empire, and Return of the Jedi this year with my daughter. I told her we'll watch it.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna do what these guys do on YouTube. There's this great collection of videos where you put a camera on your child on The Empire Strikes Back, and when Darth Vader says, "I am your father," you get their reaction.
Oh my gosh.
Because what was our reaction? It was like, whoa.
See, we want that for PagerDuty, actually.
Yes.
We want, when you receive a page at 3 a.m., we want a
Take
camera
your reaction.
on you. Yeah, exactly.
Like,
we do.
Goddamn servers. I knew I should have went with the SSD drives. SSD drives trying. All right, listen, Dave Cliff, we could talk for hours. Product, Sherpa. It's a great company, huh, PagerDuty. You guys in Canada?
Fantastic.
Where are you?
I work out in Toronto, actually.
Toronto, great city.
Yeah.
And you got that, what is that, Ottawa? Or not Ottawa, Waterloo.
Yeah.
Are you a Waterloo guy?
I am a Waterloo guy, yeah.
So many smart people up there. Such a secret weapon. I go up there with Chamath, and Sam Altman's up there. And I was like, Sam, what are you doing up here?
Yeah.
He's like, well, it's kind of like the secret weapon if you want to find great developers and talent.
That's right.
Waterloo has got thousands of students.
Hack the North.
Hack the North.
Yeah,
that's where I spoke.
event.
I was at the Hack the North event.
I was there too, yeah.
Chamath, people don't know this, because he's not. Chamath brags about a lot of things. He doesn't brag about his charity.
Yeah.
He's building a building up there. It's going to be him and his wife are building a building. It's in the news. I'm not speaking out of turn, but he's been very quiet about it. It's amazing. There's thousands of computer science students up there.
Yeah.
PagerDuty's got, what, 50 people, 100 people?
We're up to almost 200 now.
200?
Yeah, we got about 35 in Toronto area and about 150 down here. It's just,
The revenues are going crazy, and I missed this investment, and I'm going to lose a lot of money. If you guys raise another round, I want a phone call. I want to drop 100 dimes into this. Forget about you guys.
I'll put you on the list.
Forget about you guys. Maybe you have some secondary shares. Maybe I could buy some of your shares. You have to buy a house. You got these kids, Dave.
I know,
Might be time for you to pare your position 10, 20%. Maybe I get a discount on the common. We can talk about this. Maybe your kids, a little college education fund, diversify for you.
I need some parenting advice, so maybe we can trade.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Trust me, we all need a little parenting advice. All right, listen, Dave Cliff, a pleasure talking to you. Thanks to PagerDuty for making a great product. Like I said, a lot of my companies use it and love it. Great price, great company, great team, blah, blah, blah. And you also support This Week in Startups, which really means a lot to me because I do this show. I have to producer Jackie, Kevin, I got all these people working on the show, and we don't make a profit off it. We just make an impact, right? Yeah. And it's really, I need support from you guys and gals to make it happen. So real pleasure having you guys as a partner. Absolutely. And PagerDuty is a great product. And do you do something for startups, by the way? If you have a tiny company, is there a startup program?
Absolutely, we do.
So they can get a pretty good deal?
Yeah, reach out to us. And
cool. What's your email, by the way, Dave? You're not we can give your email on the air.
DCliff.
DCliff at PagerDuty.com. If you want
CLIFFE, excuse me.
Oh, there's an E at the end.
There. Yep.
DCliff. That's the French pronunciation. Cliffer. Cliffer?
It's definitely British. But
it's British, yeah. No accent grave over the E. CLIFFE. And he's looking forward to Doctor Strange as well.
Absolutely.
All right, there you go. Everybody email DCliff at PagerDuty if you want to get the inside line or you need specific support. Always you guys come out and support the startup, so that's great. Yeah. And I appreciate that as well. All right, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.